I thought you didn't because it was
but
late at
not
night.
often. Like I would come with Nancy. I came
Okay.
sometimes with Nancy.
Okay, so Yvette would come. Was it like was one of the regulars back then? Okay. I think Yvette beats you, but yeah, Shelley, you're a close second. And
Yeah.
Nancy actually wanted to join tonight. I don't know if she'll join or if she'll just well, she's
Oh,
yeah, okay. Anyway, so most of the Torah studies class that we've done till now have been based on the Rebbe's teachings. Um, and many of those teachings that are things that we've learned is a very interesting approach that the Rebbe took in understanding the commentary called Rashi. So Rashi is, I would say, the basic commentary on the Torah. Um, I'll tell you why. Yeah, that's a good question. Why is it called Rashi? Okay, so from all the sages that wrote commentary, he wrote it on the five books of the Torah, all the prophets and everything, and on the Talmud. Okay, and um, on one hand, Rashi is very simplistic and very concise and easy to understand. On the other hand, it is so full of depth and complex that there are commentators on Rashi's comments, including the Rebbe, who is one of them. So this year, what we're going to do is, which we've done in the past, we never really like pointed it out, is that we're only going to be learning the Rebbe's teachings on Rashi's commentary, and we're going to be bringing that out more than what we have before. Now, who was Rashi? Why is it called Rashi? So Rashi, his name was Rabbi Shlomo ben Yitzchak, Shlomo, the son of Yitzchak, and he lived in southern France. I want to say Alsace. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Okay. Actually, I have a book here, about his life, or about his family and everything. And he was a tremendous scholar, and he had an amazing grasp on Torah knowledge. And he, oh, thank you so much. I want to say in the 12th century, 11th century, 12th century, something like that. I'll find it in a minute. No, I wrote it down somewhere. So I'll find it in a moment. Oh yeah, 11th century, late 11th century. Okay. And he gave advice, insights in Torah learning and in Jewish life. He gave halachic rulings, and many communities across Europe, wrote him letters and asked for his advice. He was a great teacher, and many of his students became great leaders and sages. And his grandchildren are very well known. So Rashi only had daughters, actually, and some even say that Rashi's daughters put on tefillin because they were so scholarly and he only had daughters, but he had grandsons, and his grandsons are also great Torah commentators. Oh, so there are, yeah, there's descendants. So actually, I think Meryl, well, she's first cousins with my brother-in-law, my sister's husband, and they're actually descendants of Rashi, if I believe. I believe.
Muriel's family?
Okay, and Yvette's saying that two people at PJC are also descendants of Rashi. Yeah, so because I think the Rebbe was a descendant of Rashi, and so anyone was somehow related to the Rebbe. So the first Chabad Rebbe means that the first Chabad Rebbe was a descendant of Rashi. Yeah. Okay. So now, um, so every like many of the English translations, like when you read a Torah, like when you go to Shul and you open the Chumash and it's an English translation, many times the English translation is not quite literal because some words are very difficult to understand without Rashi. So many of times the translation kind of includes Rashi's explanation on it without saying that. And then you'll go into the Rashi and then it will say it, explain it. But so many of the English translations that we have today actually even include a little, because that is the base, considered the basic understanding of the Torah is learning it, and Talmud is learning it with Rashi. But sometimes it's hard to understand a certain verse or a certain word, and so they use Rashi's translation of it. Now, so Rashi, we said, why is it Rashi? Rashi, R is for rabbi, the Sh is for Shlomo, and the Y is for Yitzchak, right? Because that's his father's name. but it also could be translated as, could be a acrostic for Rabban Shel Yisrael, which means like rabbi or teacher of Israel. Now, also what's very interesting is that he wrote, he rewrote the commentary on the Talmud 3 times till he felt he got it very clear and right. So that's also very interesting. Okay. Now, many scholars quote Rashi, and it's considered part of the basic Torah understanding. So you can't really learn Torah. Like, for example, the famous eye for an eye, right? So we obviously, Rashi brings down, you don't just knock someone's eye out if they not do right, you have to pay compensation, right? Different things like that, a lot of basic stuff. A lot of things that people like take for granted as part of the Torah, they don't realize it's not actually in the verses of the Torah, but it's in the Rashi, or Rashi brings it down from a midrash or from somewhere else. So a lot of things that we think are just basic, we don't realize how it's not from the Torah itself, it's really through an explanation. Now, during, in the 1400s, so very interesting, there were 9 books published, I guess. When did the publishing press come up to being? Printing press? I forgot, I guess it must have been around then, a little earlier actually. So 9 Jewish books. One of those Jewish books that were printed was Rashi's commentary. And that's how, and from all those 9 Jewish books, only Rashi's commentary is the one that kind of still exists today from those 9 books. When was he, where or when? Where? I think it was Alsace, France. Yeah. He lived in France all his life. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of amazing stories about him too. Yes. Okay. Now, during his time and, after his time, but, immediately after his time, many Jewish sages are very impressed and in awe by Rashi's brilliance, by his commentaries. And we're going to read a little bit about that. So the first one, 1 second. We're going to read is the Evan Ezra. He was Rabbi Abraham ibn Ezra. He lived, I'm guessing, in Toledo, Spain. And he was only a teenager when Rashi passed away, but he had much to say about him. A little poem I want to say over here, text 1a. Who would like to read it? Oh, sorry. First class, we are page 3. You want to do it, Sylvia? Thanks.
A star has gone forth from France, a community established on firm foundations. An awe-inspiring commentary he penned, his sobriquet,
Yeah.
sobriquet?
I don't know.
Exponent of faith. His is a book of redemption for all who question, pleasing to the nation Israel.
Okay. Then 100 years later, there was Nachmanides, the Ramban, who also praised Rashi. Text 1b. Want to do that, Carrie?
I will place as illumination before me the lights of the pure candelabra, the commentaries of Rabbi Shlomo, a crown of glory, and a diadem of beauty.
Okay.
To him go the rights of the firstborn. I will study his words with soaring love.
Okay, so Ramban, Nachmanides, quoted Rashi very often, and even a little later in the end of the 13th century, beginning of 14th century, was the Meiri. Let's see what he has to say about Rashi. Shelley, you gonna go for it?
Okay. Chief among all commentators is Rashi of blessed memory. If his attackers are numerous, he is equipped to defend, parrying with words succinct and wise. Only select thinkers discern his greatness, deflecting bundles of questions, but with a word.
Okay.
With but a word.
With but a word. Okay. So yeah, so again, we said his Rashi on his commentary on one hand seemed very simplistic and beginner level. On the other hand, there seemed to be great depth within it. And believe it or not, there are 300 commentators on Rashi itself. Forget about none on the Torah, but on Rashi's commentary. And that's only right since we said he was, that was at the end of the 11th century. So that means it's been about 1,000 years, right? Very interesting. So there's so much depth into Rashi. A great Kabbalist, the Shalar, also spoke about Rashi 2a. I'm gonna go for that one, Batya.
Sure. Rashi wrote his commentary with divine inspiration.
Okay, so what does that mean? So why does the Shalar, this Kabbalist, say that Rashi wrote his commentary with great divine inspiration, meaning that God told him what to write, God inspired with him what to write, because he was able to use such few words to articulate a larger teaching. So he didn't like write a whole. Some if you look, some of the commentaries are like this long for every. When they decide they want to write something, it's like this whole long paragraph. Rashi is usually like a sentence, 2, 3 sentences. If it's like more than 4 sentences, it's a big Rashi. So he figured, yeah, he wrote, one hand so simple. On the other hand, there's really a lot in there. So let's read text 2b a little bit more about it. These are all people talking about Rashi, and we did not repeat anyone once yet. 2b. Back to Sylvia.
He was extremely precise with his words, hinting at multiple teachings with the change of a single letter.
Okay, so just like one word in the Torah can be explained in different ways, so Rashi would use one word that can teach a lot. So here are some of the commentaries. I'm going to mention a few of the commentators that will be using this year who comment on Rashi, who try to, give a commentary on Rashi's commentary. Okay, so here we go. Here's a list online. I'll turn it around so you guys can see it also. So we have Rabbi Eliyahu Mizrahi, known as the Re'im, Rabbi Yehuda Lo, who's also known as the Maharal, the one who made the Golem, I think. Rabbi David Prado, the Maskil David, Rabbi Mordechai Yahi, Lavush Hara'a, Rabbi Shapsai Das, the Sifsei Chacham. These are a few of the famous rabbis that comment on Rashi's commentary. And to understand Rashi and his commentary better, we have to understand the 4 different levels of Torah learning. Okay? Yes.
So there are 4 levels of Torah learning, you said?
Yes. There's 2 questions. So Sylvia's asking if there's still rabbis now. So first of all, the Rebbe, which was till 1990. Well, actually, we'll speak about it when the Rebbe did commentaries on Rashi. But I don't know if like right today, but definitely, in this past century. Yeah, definitely. Could be even today. It's possible. Okay. Okay. So for every verse, every lesson, every whatever it is in Torah, there are 4 perspectives. It could be understood through 4 perspectives. Let's read 3a. That will answer Shelley's questions. Okay, go for it, Harry.
The Torah can be understood on 4 levels: the plain understanding, the allegorical understanding, the homiletical understanding, and the mystical understanding. Beyond these are secrets upon secrets, known only to God.
Okay, so every time we read something in the Torah, we can just have the plain meaning, right? Bereshis bara Elokim as hashamayim in the beginning, God created heaven and earth, so that's the plain meaning. Then there's the allegorical understanding. You can understand a little more deeper into it. Then there's the homiletical, which you find hints in the words and this and that, and you can learn out ways of how we have to serve God or this or that with it. And then there's the mystical understanding, which brings the Kabbalah into it. So they're all very different, interesting ways of understanding the Torah. So let's just, So for example, it's at the plain meaning. Then we have the allegorical, which is teachings based on the interference and implication, like a gematria. Let's say sometimes this word here. This word equals this amount, equals this and this many numbers, and that number equals to this, and stuff like that. Homiletical, that through the midrash or text, or we can learn some type of halacha out of it. And the mystical, as I said, the Kabbalistic interpretation. Okay. Now, Rashi, by looking at one of the first commentaries that Rashi writes in the beginning of the Torah, in the Parshas of Bereshis, we see how Rashi explains how he comments, what he's trying to do when he makes a commentary on the Torah. What's he trying to do? So let's read 3b. Shelley, for you.
There are many agadic, non-legalistic explanations in the Midrash. These were arranged by our sages in proper order in the Midrash, Bereshit, Rabbah, and other Midrashic texts. I, however, have come only to teach the plain meaning of the text, and I will also use such agadic texts that clarify the plain meaning of the biblical text, each word in its proper way.
Okay, so this is Rashi himself telling us in the Parsha of Bereshis that he tries only to give a basic explanation, plain meaning. If he needs to bring something down from the Talmud, from the Midrash, he'll bring it down only to explain the plain meaning. So that's how he looked at it. He felt he's just trying to help people understand the plain and simple meaning of the Torah. Okay? If he needs to bring these other sources to clarify, yes, he will. But if someone is well versed in Rashi, in the Rashi commentaries, you see that he does bring a lot of measures down. He does bring a lot of different types of things down. So seemingly, it seems more than like the plain meaning. And many rabbis differ in why Rashi uses so much of the Midrash, so much of the allegorical explanations. And here is a more contemporary commentator, more contemporary rabbi that tries to like explain it all, tries to like bring it all together. Text number 4. But you want to do a long one, or should I give it to Shelley? Yep. Up to you.
I'll do it if you don't want to.
Why do you ask that? I can't do long ones.
No, you could. That's fine. You could. I just sometimes you say, "Oh, I don't want to," so that's why I'm giving you the option.
No, I don't think
It's
I
only
do.
saying that you have to do it. So there we go.
Okay.
Okay.
With respect to this question, we find multiple approaches among the super commentaries on Rashi. Rabbi Eliyahu Mizrahi, for example, thought Rashi makes use of homiletic interpretation wherever possible. Cited in the introduction to Maskell le David. In his introduction to Maskell le David, Rabbi David Prado, one of the great super commentators on Rashi, disagreed. He wrote, "Our teacher only made use of homily when absolutely necessary, meaning when the literal translation failed to satisfy."
1 second. It continues. Hold on. Okay, continue.
On the other side of the spectrum, we find the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer Ashkenazi, the author of Sefer HaZikaron, in his super commentary to Exodus. He wrote that Rashi, quote, chooses homiletic. What does that mean?
Homiletic. It's one of the deeper, I'm going to see the Hebrew word to make it easier for me. It's one of the deeper explanations. 1 second, give me a sec.
I never heard
The homiletic. Oh, like hints.
Like a homily.
Yeah, like hints in the Torah. Like you see a word and it means something much deeper.
Okay, never heard the word. Chooses homiletic interpretation over the obvious and plain meaning of the text. He stated even more clearly, Rashi neglects the literal meaning of most biblical passages and relies instead on the homiletic interpretations of our sages of blessed memory. When he wrote on several occasions, "I have only come to reconcile the plain meaning of the text," he referred only to the specific passages under discussion, not to the entire Torah.
Thank you. Okay, great. Okay, so the Rebbe actually said it's true that Rashi is only trying to teach us the plain meaning, the simple understanding. Rashi isn't trying to bring down mystical insights or allegorical, teachings and stuff like that. He's just trying to get to the basic meaning of the text. Now, Rashi concentrates on young audiences of Torah learners. So Rashi is trying to teach the Torah, trying to help people teach the Torah that are just starting out, okay? And who is that? The 5-year-old school child, okay? So what Rashi had in mind when he wrote the Torah is the 5-year-old child who's just starting to learn Torah. He doesn't know much yet, and his mind isn't so developed or sophisticated in its thinking yet. So let's read it. And why do we say the 5-year-old? Because the Mishnah brings down that what age do you start learning Torah? Age 5. So back to Sylvia.
Torah at the age of 10, one studies Mishnah. At the age of 13, one is obligated in mitzvot. At the age of 15, one studies the Talmud.
Okay, so Rashi is bringing answers to a young child who was just learning for the first time, and he has like innocent questions or basic questions, or his mind's not thinking so deeply. So he's just, what does this word mean? Why is this here? Why is this story next to this story? Different things like that. And so on one hand, that's very simplistic. A 5-year-old, right? What kind of questions can I ask? Actually, I remember I had a teacher in seminary, and she'd always do that. She'd be like, oh, let's look at this Rashi. See, I can imagine my 5-year-old son coming to me and asking me this question. Okay. Anyway, so on one hand, the answers of Rashi seem very simplistic and very simple, and a 5-year-old might be brilliant, be very smart, but they're not usually going to think very in a complicated way or very sophisticated type of way. Obviously, there's always exceptions. And a 5-year-old, they learn something's told to them, something's taught to them, and then they remember it usually, right? Not when they're our age, and at least me, and your brain feels so stuffed that anything else you try to learn, did I remember this, right? Did I remember that? I have to go look back at my notes. I have to check it over here. I have to check it over there, right? But a 5-year-old usually has a clean slate, and you tell them something, they remember it, and their minds are clear. And so Rashi's kind of writing it down, explaining to them. So I know before when we've done other classes, let's say the Rebbe will write, why does Rashi explain this here and not there, or not something, not when he explained something else previously, why didn't he put it there? He said, oh, because a 5-year-old child didn't learn yet this specific thing, and he only learned that specific, he always brings out the 5-year-old child learned till here, so that's all he knows. He didn't learn something ahead, so he's not going to know that thing. It's very interesting. Okay, so let us read text 6a. Is it your turn, Carrie?
The explanation for Rashi's comment was debated in several publications, and several answers were offered. However, each answer took up, on average, a page and a half. They cited many teachings from our sages of blessed memory, from other commentaries, even citing certain pages and footnotes from my teachings in Kutei Sifot. However, we must remember that these explanations are presented to 5-year-olds who wonder why we pester them with lengthy lectures. They want a simple and quick explanation of Rashi so they can go and play. Engaging in lengthy explanations with citations from Hebrew texts, especially the texts written without vowels, is off the mark.
Okay, so you were a teacher for what age? That's different ages?
Sometimes 3.5,
okay,
and 6 and 7.
Okay, so you get the idea, right? What child wants to sit and learn to lengthy explanations? They want to go out and play. So Rashi kept it short, and all these people who are making these long explanations, it's not for a 5-year-old child. So they want answers in a language they can understand, and Rashi usually, tries to explain things very straightforward and simply, so you don't have any questions. Okay, so Rashi's commentary has to be self-explanatory to a child, okay, without any fancy super commentaries. Okay, so 6b, that's what the Rebbe says about that. Okay, back to Shelley.
Rashi wrote his commentary in a manner that his teachings are obvious from a plain reading of the biblical text. Rashi does not rely on the super commentaries of Stifte,
Yeah.
Chachamim, Rabbi Mizrahi, or others to explain his meaning. These commentaries were written hundreds of years after Rashi wrote his commentary. When Rashi taught his students, they understood him without the aid of these commentaries. Therefore, we too should be able to understand Rashi by perusing the plain meaning of the biblical text.
So I have to make a confession here because someone like me, I don't particularly always understand Rashi. I mean, now I do because I've learned it so many times of the basic Chumash. You know, I do a lot more, but definitely not when I was a student. So I said, oh, okay, this is what Rashi says, very easy to understand. So I guess in those days, I guess kids were a little bit more, people were more advanced in a way. I don't know, or was more straight, it was more simple to understand things. Now, another interesting thing is the word Rashi, Resh Shin Yud. If you turn it around, it becomes the word Yashar, which means like very straightforward. So he just teaches something in a very straightforward way. So, so the Rebbe insists that we could understand Rashi without all the commentaries on Rashi, because a 5-year-old can understand it. And so without all these different kinds of theories and stuff. So this is what the Rebbe actually ends up doing. He takes the Rashi and he kind of tears it apart. He says, why would this? Why would this person say this? Why would that person say this about Rashi? And he explains how Rashi was explaining it in a very simple way, which we'll get to for the rest of the year. But meanwhile, let's read text number 7. Okay, Batya, back to you. Wait, you're on mute. We don't hear you.
Okay. The super commentaries on Rashi primarily explain Rashi in the manner of halakha. Halakha,
yeah.
Okay. Allegory, homily, or mysticism. With respect to the latter, it is primarily the commentary of Rabbi Yehuda Leib Low from Prague, author of Gur Ra. R.A., who often explain Rashi according to the mystical tradition.
Okay, so Rashi is teaching a 5-year-old who doesn't really know much yet. He isn't expecting a young child to open a whole bunch of books and to learn all these different things and to study all the commentaries, right? So when the Rebbe explains Rashi, he is kind of showing how Rashi had to bring down a midrash to prove the plain meaning, things like that. Okay. So why, and when did the Rebbe start teaching the Rashi? Why did he start explaining Rashi in each week's Torah portion, basing his deep Hasidic talks on understanding Rashi and the Torah? Why did he do this, or when did he do this? What's this all about? How did he get into it? Okay, anyone here ever see clips of the Rebbe like speaking? Okay, yeah. Someone want to describe what they saw?
Well, he speaks in Yiddish.
Yeah, what's the scene?
He's amongst many congregants, a lot of his followers, completely crowded.
So yeah, so I've been to many of the Rebbe's talks, and right, as many of you seen that the Rebbe's like in the middle, there's like a long table, and there's a whole bunch of other tables, and people are all around. There's it's like, lots and lots and lots of people sitting and listening to the Rebbe speak, who's speaking in Yiddish. The ladies, you don't see them in the videos most of the time, but they're up in the balconies. There's like the women's section, and we're all crowded and stuffed in there. The same way the men look all squished and crowded, the ladies are also sitting there squished and crowded. Now, this was called a Farbrengen, where the Rebbe would speak about a half hour or so about a Torah subject, and then he would take a break. During the break, they would sing. The Rebbe would leave in song, like in a Hasidic niggin, and he would also like give people l'chaim, so people would have little things of wine, and they would hold it out, and the Rebbe would acknowledge them while they were singing. So he would actually look people in the eye, even if it was far, far away, many feet away, and this would take place usually on Shabbos afternoons, about 1:30. So that's another thing. We used to go when I was already living in Crown Heights, they only had the Shabbos Farbrengen, and it was every single Shabbos, which earlier, it wasn't always every single Shabbos. And it was at 1:30. So if the shul ended about 12:30 or something, people would run home, make Kiddush, eat something really, really quick, and then run back so they could be at Farbrengen. Some people wouldn't even go home. Like I most of the time wouldn't, because I was just a girl. I didn't really have a home to go to or whatever. And we all saved places. Like we would come early in the morning to make sure that we had our like a close spot that we can, see or hear or something, like be part of it. So some people, like older people, maybe had their set spots, but most people, the younger generation, all we just had to like be there at a certain time early in the morning, at least for the girls, I don't know, or certain areas. If you wanted to get that spot, you had to come in the morning and be there, do the davening there, pray there during the davening time, and then so it was a very special time. And the other time the Rebbe would bring would be during the week, would be on like a special occasion. It was like a Hasidic holiday, something like that. Then that would start usually at 9:30 at night and go to like 1:30 in the morning. And it's the same style that the Rebbe would speak a little bit, and they would do the singing and the L'chaim, and then continue. So I know like many of you have seen that like kind of that video, that picture, and you kind of understand what I'm saying. And I remember also is that when I was a child, I was young, so we lived in Chicago, right? So I wasn't in New York, unless we would go into New York. So my house was the place in Chicago we would like broadcast the Rebbe's talks at Farbrengens to the Chicago community. So we had a whole, I don't know, my father had a whole like electric, thing of how he would take the phone and set it up and put it to a speaker, and everyone, all the Chabad people from Chicago would come to our house and hang out there, however long it was, to listen to that. And sometimes they would do it in, maybe in the later years, sometimes they would do it in the shul near us, and we'd go there, whatever it was. We wouldn't go to sleep till like 1:30, Chicago time. So maybe it was a little earlier. We would go to sleep really, 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 really late. But it was definitely an experience and something I'm happy that I was able to experience. So this is what the Rebbe would do. And previous Rebbes would do similar. Now in 1964, the Rebbe's mother, her name was Chana, Rebbetzin Chana, she passed away. And she passed away, it was the 6th of Tishrei, so that's between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Okay, now, so the first Shabbos that was like a regular Shabbos after that was the Shabbos of Parshas Noach, which is like this year. This Shabbos is going to be Parshas Noach. Now, at that Farbrengen, the Rebbe did something different than a little bit different than usual. He started to expound on the Rashi teachings that we're just all kind of talking about and discussing. Okay. And he kind of did that in memory of his mother. So let's read text number 8. Who are we up to? Oh, here's, guys, one second. Here's a picture of her. I'll turn it around so you guys can see. I actually have a better picture of her on my shelf. She survived. She had escaped communist Russia, where she followed her husband into exile until he passed away, and then she was able to escape and come to America. Okay, that's a whole different story in itself. Okay, who was the last reader? Your turn, Sylvia. Okay.
Right. Instead of starting the Sikha, as soon as he sat down, he usually did. The Rebbe requested that a Chumash, a copy of the Pentateuch, be brought to him. That the rabbi should request a book during a Farbrengen was extremely rare. It was a first indication that something unusual was underway. The Chumash was brought, and the Rebbe opened it to Parsha Noach and began reading and translating the first passage. He then moved on to Rashi, reading and translating the second Rashi on the Parsha. It was a beautiful scene. Hundreds of Hasidim crowding around as the Rebbe sat and taught Rashi like a teacher in
Later, yeah.
First translating and then proceeding to ask several penetrating questions, cutting to the very heart of Rashi's words. No one realized at the time, but this was a historic moment. The Rebbe had just quietly and without much fanfare launched a revolution that would accompany every Shabbat Farbrengen for the next 23 years and would change the way we look at Rashi.
Okay, so the Rebbe began to teach Rashi and explaining the verse in the Chumash according to the Rashi and explain the Rashi and expound on it and create a much clearer understanding, and also created principles in learning and how to learn Rashi. So this kind of opened the eyes of many, many people. It's a very new way, an interesting way to understand it, much deeper way to understand it, and how to look at Rashi in a whole new light. So we learned many, on one hand, deep, on the other hand, simplistic explanations or teachings out of Rashi. Okay. Which again, as I said before, in our previous other classes throughout the years, many of those classes were based on these teachings of the Rebbe through Rashi. Okay, so the Rebbe continued this learning style every Shabbos, it says, until his wife passed away in 1988. Okay, so that's, do the math, I guess it's 23 years, that's what it said in the text. Okay, so what types of questions does the Rebbe address on Rashi? Okay, so Rashi didn't write questions that his commentary came to answer, he just wanted to explain things. So many rabbis came up with all kinds of complex questions to try and understand Rashi and why is he explaining this thing, but the Rebbe looked at it differently. The Rebbe would say, okay, what would a 5-year-old question ask on this pasuk? And then he would understand what Rashi was really asking. And like, as I said before, why does there seem to be an extra word? Why did Rashi bring a certain proof from a text that a child didn't learn yet? Why did Rashi address a question in the passage when the same question arises earlier? Why does Rashi give multiple explanations? Why couldn't he just give one explanation? All kinds of different things. Now, the Rebbe answered all these questions in a very refreshing and simple manner. And many times the Rebbe explanations led to more Torah thoughts and more learning and more lessons and Kabbalistic teachings and halachic teachings. As again, so took all the 4 ways of learning Torah, all the 4 levels of learning Torah, and kind of intertwined them into one teaching. That is text number 9.
I have explained many times that our holy Torah is a single Torah. The inner dimension of the Torah and the halachic dimension of the Torah are all one, like a body and soul. This means that all the sections of the Torah fit together like multiple parts of a single branch.
And so sometimes commentaries seem to contradict each other, or one part of the Torah doesn't seem to be some seems a little bit different than the other part. Why does it say this here, that there, and all that kind of stuff? But the Rebbe was able to explain it in a way that how it all fit together, how it all intertwined together, a unified approach. And text number 10, let's see. Okay, Shelley.
There are hidden wondrous teachings in every word of Rashi. Peruse Rashi's comments on the Torah. At face value, you might think it is light reading, but look, and you'll find wonders.
Okay, so this year, this is what we're going to do. We're going to learn the Rashi and the Torah through the Rebbe's eyes, and we'll find very interesting, wondrous explanations on the Torah through the eyes of Rashi, through the Rebbe. Now, there's something called the wine of Torah. And what's the wine of Torah? That is the mystical teachings within the Torah. And the Rebbe will make a special effort to find that mystical teachings and inspirations through Rashi's text, even though Rashi officially wasn't teaching deeper and mystical explanations, but through his plain understanding and plain explanation, you were able to the Rebbe was able to pull out the wine of Torah. Let's read more about the wine of Torah, 10b. Katya. Right?
Okay. Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, also known as the Alter Rebbe, once said, Rashi's commentary on the Torah is the wine of the Torah. It opens the heart, bringing to the surface our inherent love and awe of God.
Just like when you drink wine, your insides come out and are revealed, the same thing with Rashi to the Torah. Okay. Okay. So on one hand, Rashi's for a 5-year-old to understand. On the other hand, there's so much deeper explanations and meaning in Rashi itself. Number 10c. So,
Every word in Rashi's commentary contains a revealed understanding and concealed strata. Both are true.
okay. So sometimes, right, they say you take a ball and you bounce it from really high up, right? It goes down much, much lower, and right, it bounces really low. Or you for something to reach really low, it has to come from a high source, right? A waterfall. The higher the waterfall, right, the more strength that water is going to fall. Or a penny from the Empire State Building. Remember always that the idea of we used to always say as a kid, drop a penny from the Empire State Building and it could kill somebody. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I always remember saying. So to teach a complex concept to a young child, right, you have to take it from the highest level for someone like Rashi with such brilliance. Rabbi Gordon, who has all this, who has a lot of recorded classes, he's passed away, I don't know how many years already, but he always says that in his classes, that the most brilliant people are the people who have to teach young children, because they have to take a deep concept and then explain it at the most simplistic level. If you're able to explain something, if you're a professor and you can explain something to another professor or to, university, students, it's different than having to explain something to a young child. And sometimes it's like much harder to get that into a small package. Exactly. So Rashi's explanation, it comes from the highest level and has all these wonderful gems and deep teachings, but also can be understood to a young child on their level. So let us read 10d. Who are we up to? Is it you? I think Carrie, no? Yeah. Thank you.
Although Rashi's commentary on the Torah explains the plain meaning of the text, it also contains wondrous teachings from other sections of the Torah, including the mystical mysteries of the Torah. As Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, the Alter Rebbe, famously said, Rashi's commentary on the Torah is the wine of the Torah. However, to dig through to the wondrous teachings and the wine of the Torah, we must first study the plain meaning of Rashi's commentary. Because Rashi embedded the wondrous teachings and the wine of the Torah into the plain meaning of the Torah's text.
Okay. So now we're going to go through a few basic principles of Rashi's teachings, so we can understand how he learns things out. And because I think the Rebbe puts together from all those things. So number one, as I said before, Rashi speaks to the 5-year-old student and explains the text in the plainest possible way, in a way a child can understand. Number two, Rashi does not present questions. He explains the passage and the questions fall away. We must therefore always determine precisely what question Rashi is addressing. Sometimes there's a little question, but a lot of times not. Rashi only offers 2 explanations when neither captures the plain meaning of the text fully. However, the two always complement each other. In such instances, the explanations that is presented first is smoother and more conducive to the plain meaning. Over here?
Yes.
Okay. Rashi does not usually cite the sources of his teaching. He only cites the source or the name of the person he's quoting to answer a question a student might ask. If he cites a name or a source, he must ask which question Rashi is attempting to answer. So, like, if he says it, he cites the person, the rabbi or somebody who explained that thing, it's for his precise reason. This rabbi, because this is what he represented, or this is who he was. Okay, now, so these are things that the Rebbe that kind of put together from the different from learning what he learned about Rashi, and a few more rules that sometimes will come up. Rashi's words are precise. Every word contributes to understanding the text. If a word appears superfluous, we must ask why it was included. Number two, Rashi begins each comment with a header, compromises the words from the passage he intends to address. These headers are precise. They include every word Rashi addresses. Never more, never less. When unnecessary words appear in the header, or when words appear to be missing, there's a reason. So, like, it takes a word or a phrase from the actual pasuk, from the verse, and then it explains those words. So why did it have this word in it? Why not that word? So we have to really understand it. Okay. Rashi only addresses the questions that arise in the mind of a 5-year-old. On the other hand, Rashi addresses every question a 5-year-old might ask. If you think a question that Rashi did not ask is either not a question or was already answered. Number 4, Rashi teaches in order that the child studies. Rashi therefore does not ask questions on passages or rely on sources a child has not yet studied, has yet to study. On the other hand, Rashi expects a child to remember everything taught until that point. Okay, so that is basically our introduction for this year's Torah studies. Hope it was interesting. And we're looking forward. So all these next classes will be similarly set out how our previous classes were, but they're all going to be based solely on the Rebbe's explanation of Rashi. Yeah. So this is kind of like a prep course. Yeah. So I just want to, because we didn't really go through the parsha, this week's parsha is Noah, the flood, that story. I'll just, if we have a few minutes, I'll try to do this quickly. I don't know if I'll go too quickly. But one of the things interesting things in this parsha is when Noah and his family come out of the ark, Hashem says, "Pru urvu or shetzu haaretz," be fruitful and multiply and spread over the earth. So basically, have children. And the question is that in last week's parsha, in Bereshit, when Adam was created, Hashem says the same thing. So why is there a repeat? This is 1,657 years later. Why do we have to say it again? So Rashi says that the first time it was mentioned, Adam was more of a blessing. It wasn't really a command. It was like, oh, be fruitful, like a blessing. And here, when he tells it to Noah and his family, it's more of a command. It's also when they came out of the ark. What's interesting is this mitzvah is really directed only towards men. So men are obligated to try and have children. For women, it's not obligated. Hopefully, it's more natural to us. But it's really their obligation. Now, either way, it was a command to Noah after the flood. So you could say, hey, yeah, they just came out of a year where the whole world was destroyed with some kind of apocalypse, and they get scared. Hey, why should we have any more children? I mean, maybe this is going to happen again, right? And so Hashem has to tell him, you have to have, don't be scared, have children. And at the same time, Hashem says, don't worry, I'm never going to destroy the world again like this. Now, in a way, it says when Hashem brought the flood, it says like Hashem almost regretted creating the world, that it would turn to such evil. So it sounds a little bit funny. And also, what is this idea that how do we know, besides we're okay, Hashem promised us we'll never bring the flood again, never destroy the world again. But what's, how do we really know that? Or what's I don't say the proof, but is there any type of reasoning behind that besides for Hashem just telling it to us? So even though we learn in the basic story of the flood that, why did the flood come? The people, right, were bad, they sinned against Hashem, they had to bring the flood, blah, blah, blah. It was a punishment. But it wasn't just quite a punishment, okay? That's more the simplified story. It says when they came out of the ark, they saw a new world. It was a world all new, literally. So really, when they were in the ark, it was as if they were in utero. It was like they were in this cuddled bubble place, nothing, whatever was going on around them, but they were all protected, and I don't want to say it was peaceful in there, but they had what they needed. They got their food, right? They were safe. And when they came out of the ark, it was like they coming out like a new life, a newborn. Now, but when they came out, it wasn't like the creation of the world. When Adam and Chava were created, there were already birds and bees were buzzing, and there were, animals. It was like life happening around them. When Noah came out of the ark, all life was inside the ark, right? So they come out to this world, and it's like silence, nothing moving. Yeah, trees were just starting to grow and stuff. So we could look at it that it wasn't a new world just like before. It wasn't like the old world. It wasn't like just pre-flood, but there was something new in the world. There was a change in the world. And what is it? When the flood came upon the world, the whole entire world was enveloped in the water. It was like going to a mikvah, going to a ritual bath. The whole entire world got spiritually cleansed, got a new spiritual identity that it didn't have before. And just like, let's say, a convert, they go to the mikvah, they come out with a new spiritual identity that they didn't have before. A woman who goes to the mikvah, in the laws of family purity, she comes out, she has a certain spiritual identity that she doesn't have before. There's a certain change. So before the flood, before the world went through this mikvah process, there was like any of the goodness or spirit or holiness in the world was more from like an outside source. It was like God, like if they start to do bad, they couldn't on their own just correct it and kind of like redo good or make it all good again. In a way, it had to come from an outside place. Let's say you have someone who's like depressed or really sad, and friends come over and try to cheer the person up, right? And so she'll be happy for the time being, but then they'll leave, and she'll probably good chance that she'll go back to her sadness unless something comes from within her that she's able to like overcome that. So the same thing here. The world, let's say people start doing bad, it couldn't just go back good on its own. It had to rely on God to bring that like spiritual goodness for that to come. But once the flood came and it spiritually cleansed the world, it also changed the spiritual makeup of the world that made it that now the world would be a place that we ourselves could be self-corrected. So if people start doing bad, it could be self-corrected. The goodness could still come out. It's not like, oh, bad and Hashem has to come and make it good again. We ourselves can make it good again. So it was like a certain change of identity, a change of our own, of what we are capable, what the world is capable in a spiritual sense. And that's why, okay, so now that we have this new spiritual identity in the world, Hashem's telling Noah, hey, the world won't be destroyed again because you guys have the ability you have that spiritual strength to be able to correct it or clear it yourself. And that is our little Dvar Torah, because we didn't really have a Dvar Torah today. Anyway, stop share, stop.